At the end of each day, when the noise of the world recedes and you're finally alone with yourself, there is a moment, brief, sometimes fleeting, when you have the opportunity to look back, to take stock, to tell the truth, not to others, but to yourself. And that's perhaps the most difficult kind of truth to confront, because there's no social reward for it, no applause, no praise. There's only the quiet awareness that, if you're honest, you've failed in some way. You've fallen short, you've avoided something you knew you should have faced, and yet, if you're willing, that very confrontation can become the foundation upon which a better version of yourself is built. Too many people end their days in distraction. The TV stays on until they fall asleep. The phone rests on the pillow beside them. The lights are dimmed, but their mind is still avoiding itself. They push away reflection because reflection is uncomfortable. It invites judgment, first internal, then existential. It asks, did you live up to what you could have been today? Did you speak when it mattered? Did you remain silent when you knew you should have acted? Were you truthful even when it cost you? That's not a question people like to ask themselves. It's easier to retreat, to numb out. But every time you avoid that internal reckoning, you store a little more chaos inside. A little more resentment, a little more self-deception, and you can only carry that burden for so long before it begins to twist you into something you don't recognize, or worse, into something you do recognize and can no longer ignore. Truth is brutal. It doesn't coddle. It doesn't compromise. It exposes you for what you are in all your imperfections. But paradoxically, it also offers you redemption, because truth is the only way you can grow. You can't fix what you won't admit is broken. You can't improve a life you're pretending is fine, and you certainly can't become someone admirable if you can't face the person you've been today. The day, every day, leaves a residue. Conversations you mishandled, tasks you avoided, time you wasted, words you wish you had said, and others you wish you hadn't. That residue builds up like psychological plaque. But facing the truth at the end of the day, that quiet, honest inventory, is like brushing the soul. It hurts, it's not glamorous, but it's necessary. To face the day truthfully means looking at yourself without the shield of justification. It means you don't blame the traffic, the boss, the weather, or the other person in the argument. Not as an excuse, anyway, because excuses are the things that keep you exactly where you are. They protect your ego, sure, but they also imprison your potential. You don't want to be someone who's always got a reason. You want to be someone who takes responsibility, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. This is the function of prayer in a meaningful psychological sense. It is an act of alignment, of stripping away the rationalizations and standing bare before what you know to be right. You don't lie in prayer, at least not if you're sincere, because to lie in prayer is to lie to the deepest part of yourself. And you know when you're doing it. That's the power of this ritual, of this pause at the day's end. It's a way to look yourself in the eye and say, here is where I failed, here is where I succeeded, and here is where I need to do better. And you don't stop there. You use that information. You carry it into tomorrow like a torch, lighting the path ahead, because each day is a microcosm of your life. The way you live your day is effectively the way you live your life. And if you end the day with self-deception, you're building your life on sand. But if you end your day with truth, even bitter truth, you're laying stone. You're creating a foundation that can bear weight, that can support you as you rise toward what you might become towards something stronger, something more resilient, more courageous, more competent, more honest. And that doesn't just benefit you. It benefits the people around you, your family, your coworkers, your friends, because when you start each day by ending the previous one truthfully, you become someone that others can depend on, someone they can trust, someone who isn't perfect, but who is at least trying seriously trying to be better. So when you lie down tonight, don't run from yourself. Don't distract yourself into unconsciousness. Pause, reflect, and face the day as it was, not as you wish it had been. Because only then can tomorrow be any different. And only then can you live a life that's worth the cost of your breath. Face the day, tell the truth, and begin again. Gratitude is often dismissed as a soft emotion, a kind of sentimental nicety, something we perform in polite company or mention around a dinner table once a year. But real gratitude, deep, transformative gratitude, is nothing of the sort. It's not passive, and it's certainly not weak. It is, in fact, the foundation of responsibility. Because when you truly recognize what you've been given, even in the face of suffering, you can no longer justify a life lived carelessly. You are compelled to act differently. You are required to carry yourself with a kind of moral seriousness, because the alternative is a betrayal, not just of others, but of your own potential. Think for a moment about what you have that you did not earn. Start with the basics. You were born. You didn't cause that. Someone fed you, protected you, clothed you when you couldn't do any of it for yourself. You have language, an entire symbolic structure painstakingly built over millennia by people who died before you ever took a breath. You live in a world with clean water, electricity, medicine, technology, order, all of which were purchased by someone else's labor, sacrifice, and often blood. You benefit from a structure, a civilization, an inheritance of knowledge and sacrifice, so vast you couldn't map it, even if you spent your entire life trying. And yet, what do people often do with this? They complain, they fall into bitterness, they compare themselves to others and conclude they have been shortchanged. They resent, they believe the world owes them more. But here's the brutal truth. If you begin each day believing you've been cheated, you will never take responsibility for anything. Because why should you? If life is unfair by default, if the deck is stacked against you, then you're off the hook. You can stay angry, you can stay small, you can blame and remain inert. It's easy, and that's why it's dangerous. Gratitude, real gratitude, destroys that mindset at the root. It says, look at what I have been given. Look at what has been sacrificed for me. Look at how improbable it is that I even exist. And that perspective should shake you. It should humble you. Because once you see the immensity of the gift, the only reasonable response is, what am I going to do with it? That's where responsibility begins. Not out of guilt, not out of coercion, but out of reverence for what is. This is not about denying suffering or pretending everything is perfect. Life is suffering in large part. There's tragedy, betrayal, loss. But that's precisely why gratitude matters more, not less. It's easy to be grateful when things go well. But if you can cultivate gratitude even in hardship, you develop resilience. You recognize that even amidst pain, there is still value. There is still something to protect, something to uphold, something to build. And when you see that, you take responsibility for it. You don't abandon the world because it's broken. You serve it because it's worthy of being redeemed. Gratitude grounds you. It pulls you out of narcissism. It reminds you that the world is not organized around your convenience, that your wants are not the center of the universe. It reminds you that you are part of something larger, and that your actions matter, that your choices affect others, that you have a role to play, and once you see yourself in that light, it becomes impossible to live like your life doesn't matter. You realize that squandering your time is an act of theft from yourself, from your family, from your society. Because every moment you waste is a moment that could have been used to build something good, to speak the truth, to carry a burden someone else can't carry. People think gratitude is a feeling, but it's more than that. It's a discipline. It's something you practice deliberately because the alternative is toxic, and like any discipline, it grows with effort. You train your mind to see what is good. You notice the things you've taken for granted. And over time, that attitude transforms your behavior. You stop whining, you stop blaming, you start working, you start serving, you start carrying the weight of your existence, not because someone forced you to, but because you see clearly that it's the right thing to do. When people lack gratitude, they drift toward nihilism, toward entitlement, toward decay. They believe nothing matters, so nothing is worth preserving. But when gratitude is present, the opposite happens, meaning emerges. And meaning is what stabilizes you. It gives you the courage to endure pain, the clarity to act when it's hard, the strength to move forward when everything in you wants to collapse. And that strength is responsibility. So before you end your day, don't just count your blessings like it's a checklist. Sit with them, reflect on them, let them sink in. Think about what they cost. Think about who paid those costs, and then ask yourself, what am I going to do in return? If you answer that question honestly, you won't need to be pushed into responsibility. You'll run toward it. Gratitude opens your eyes. Responsibility gives you purpose. And together, they form the only kind of life worth living. There's a kind of storm that lives inside each of us. You might not see it when you're surrounded by routine, when your phone is buzzing or the television is on, but it's there. And when you sit in silence, especially at night, you can feel it restless, undefined, spinning. It's the chaos of your own soul, the unresolved fears, the regrets, the unspoken resentments, the truths you haven't faced, and the lies you've told to yourself and others. Most people ignore that chaos. They push it down, bury it beneath distraction or numbing habits, but ignored chaos doesn't disappear, it festers, it grows, and eventually it erupts, sometimes subtly in the form of anxiety or guilt, sometimes violently through anger, self-destruction, or despair. To bring order to that chaos is not only possible, it's necessary, and the process is as old as human consciousness itself. It's the central drama of life, to take what is disorganized, unpredictable, and frightening within you, and to shape it into something coherent and good. This isn't about perfection. It's about alignment, integrity. It's about not letting the darkest parts of yourself steer the ship while you pretend everything is fine. Because you can only avoid the chaos for so long before it consumes you, or worse, leaks out and harms the people you care about. What does it mean to bring order to your soul? First, it means being honest about what's inside it. That's no small task. You have to be willing to look, to sit with the uncomfortable parts of your past, the decisions you regret, the truths you've denied. Most people don't want to do that, and understandably so because it's painful. But all growth begins with truth. Until you see the mess, you can't begin to clean it. And if you won't look, if you won't admit what's broken, then you remain at the mercy of forces within you that you don't understand. Self-deception is the easiest way to maintain chaos. You tell yourself stories that you're fine, that it wasn't your fault, that you had no choice, that the problem is out there in the world. These lies offer short-term relief, but they carry a heavy long-term cost. They distort your perception, they weaken your character, and they keep you from taking the very actions that would actually bring relief. Because true, lasting psychological order doesn't come from pretending things are okay. It comes from confronting what's not okay and doing something about it. That's where discipline enters. You begin to impose a structure, not externally, not from someone else's rules, but from within. You start to track your behaviors. You speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable. You make promises and keep them. You set a small goal and meet it. You write down your thoughts. You clean your environment. You stop blaming and start choosing. Bit by bit, action by action, you impose order. First on your habits, then on your thoughts, then on your deeper patterns of meaning. But this isn't merely psychological housekeeping. It's moral work, because when you bring order to your soul, you become less dangerous, less impulsive, less bitter. You stop lashing out. You stop projecting your unresolved pain onto others. You begin to carry your suffering responsibly, and in doing so, you lessen the suffering around you. That's no small thing. That's how cultures are stabilized, through individuals who have dared to do the hard, quiet work of becoming internally ordered. It also means reconciling with your shadow, the parts of yourself you're ashamed of, the parts you'd rather disown. But those parts don't go away by being ignored. They only grow stronger in the dark. So you have to name them, understand them. You don't excuse them, but you learn to integrate them. Because if you don't, they control you. If you do, they can become sources of strength, transformed, refined, directed. The person who knows their darkness, who can master it rather than be ruled by it, is far more capable and far more trustworthy than the person who pretends they have none. This work never ends. You don't fix your soul once and for all. The chaos keeps coming. Life keeps shifting. New challenges arise. Old wounds reopen. But the point isn't to win once and be done. The point is to build the kind of character that can keep returning to order, day after day, no matter what happens. That's what prayer can be. That's what reflection can be. Not empty rituals, but opportunities to check in with your internal state, to adjust, to clean, to realign. When you bring order to your soul, something else happens too. You begin to hear the quiet voice of conscience more clearly. You start to know with a kind of inner certainty what you ought to do. Not what's easiest or most pleasurable or most immediately rewarding, but what's right. And that voice becomes your guide. It keeps you from falling into chaos again. It's not infallible, but it's real, and it grows stronger the more you listen to it. So when you end your day, don't rush past the mess inside. Don't be afraid of it. Sit with it, examine it, and begin slowly, patiently, to bring it into order. It's not only possible, it's your responsibility, because when your soul is in order, you become a source of strength, of peace, of clarity in a world that desperately lacks all three. There is a voice within you that doesn't just speak to who you are. It speaks to who you could be. Most people don't listen to that voice. They drown it out with distractions, with noise, with busyness and comfort. It's easier that way, because to truly hear that voice is to come face to face with the uncomfortable realization that you are falling short of your potential, that you are less than what you know you could be. And that realization is painful, but it's also the beginning of transformation. We all carry within us a vision, however faint, of a better self, a version of ourselves who tells the truth, who takes care of what needs to be done, who faces fear, endures suffering, and lifts the burden not only for themselves, but for others. That version of ourselves isn't a fantasy, it's a target, a direction, a moral compass. And the act of speaking to it, whether through reflection, prayer, journaling, or simple honest thought, is one of the most powerful actions a person can take. Why? Because you can't aim at nothing. And most people are doing exactly that. They wander through life reacting, drifting, blaming circumstances. They don't know what they're aiming for, and worse, they don't believe there's anything worth aiming at. But there is. You know it, even if you've never put it into words. You've seen glimpses of it in your own actions. When you did the right thing despite it being hard, when you helped someone without expecting anything in return, when you stood up and faced something terrifying and didn't run away. Those moments are clues. They're signs that you are more than your habits, more than your past, more than your wounds. To speak to what you could become is to start a relationship with your future self. And just like any meaningful relationship, it requires honesty. You have to ask, what kind of person do I admire? What kind of life would I be proud to have lived when it's all over? What qualities, virtues, strengths would I need to embody to become that person? These aren't abstract questions. They are deeply practical because the answers shape the choices you make today, and every choice, every action, is either moving you closer to or further from that ideal. The danger, of course, is that ideal can feel overwhelming. You look at where you are flawed, confused, inconsistent, and then you look at who you could be, and the gap is staggering. But the point isn't to become perfect overnight. The point is to aim upward, to orient yourself toward the good, to take responsibility for even one small thing you've been avoiding, to have one honest conversation you've been postponing, to do one thing today that your ideal self would do. That's enough, and then tomorrow you do it again. Progress isn't linear. You'll stumble, you'll fail, you'll betray your own standards, but if you're speaking regularly to the future you, the one who's stronger, wiser, more truthful, you'll correct your course. You'll realign. That's what prayer can be, what reflection is meant for. Not to ask for things you want, but to hold a dialogue with what you know you should be. There's a reason this idea appears in ancient traditions. The concept of the higher self, of aiming toward a transcendent ideal, is not new. It's embedded in religious stories, philosophical systems, and psychological models. The hero in myth always undergoes transformation, suffering, sacrifice, struggle, not because it's easy, but because it's the only path worth taking. You are the protagonist of your own story, but you also have to be the author. And authors don't write stories by accident. They write with intent, and intention starts with speech, with internal articulation. You need to say it. Say who you want to become. Say what you stand for. Say what you will no longer tolerate in yourself. Say what you're willing to strive for. Say it quietly if you must. Say it in your heart if you're too ashamed to speak it aloud. But speak it, because speech shapes thought, and thought shapes behavior, and behavior shapes destiny. You don't have to know every step. You don't have to see the whole path. You just need to see the next right move, and you can find it by asking the future version of you, what would you have me do today? You might be surprised by how clear the answer becomes. Not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. This dialogue with who you could become is not a one-time event. It's daily, sometimes hourly, because the world is constantly pulling you away from your highest aims. Through temptation, distraction, despair. The voice of your better self will not shout. It will whisper, and you have to create the silence to hear it. And when you hear it, you must have the courage to obey. You were not born finished. You were born with potential. That means who you are today is not the full story, not even close. But if you begin to speak to who you could be, if you form that relationship with your future self, you'll discover that transformation is not only possible, it's inevitable. Because a person who speaks to the good within them long enough and sincerely enough cannot help but rise toward it. There is a part of you that you know needs to go. You may not say it aloud, but you feel it in the quiet moments. The selfishness, the laziness, the envy, the cowardice, the bitterness. These are not accidental traits. They didn't just appear out of nowhere. They were developed, sometimes through hardship, sometimes through avoidance, sometimes as defense mechanisms. But no matter how they got there, they are now a part of you. And if you're honest, you know they're holding you back. Worse, they're pulling you down. So what do you do with these parts? You sacrifice them. To many, the word sacrifice sounds outdated, religious, or abstract. But it's none of those things. It's brutally practical. It means giving something up now for the sake of something greater later. And in this case, it means identifying the worst parts of yourself, the ones that sabotage your integrity, that poison your relationships, that drag your soul through the mud, and cutting them off, not because it's easy, but because something better is at stake, your highest self. Everyone wants to become a better person, but few are willing to go through what's required because the cost is steep. You have to let go of what's familiar, even if it's destructive. You have to confront uncomfortable truths about how you've behaved, how you've failed, and how you've willingly betrayed your own values. That's painful, but that pain is the fire of transformation. You don't get the best of you without burning away the worst. And here's the thing, the worst of you is seductive. It offers comfort, justification, and excuses. Your laziness says you've had a hard life, you deserve to rest. Your resentment says they hurt you, you're right to be bitter. Your fear says, don't try, you'll just fail. These voices are persuasive because they wrap themselves in partial truths. But partial truths are dangerous. They're traps. They keep you stagnant. They keep you from growing. To sacrifice the worst of you, you have to first recognize it. That requires ruthless self-examination. You need to look at your own behavior without flinching. Where have you lied? Where have you been weak when you should have stood strong? Where have you avoided responsibility? Where have you acted out of pride, vanity, or vengeance? These are not pleasant questions, but they are necessary. Because if you can't see the problem, you can't change it. Once you identify those parts, the next step is even harder. You have to let them go. And this isn't as simple as flipping a switch. It's a process. You will wrestle with them. You'll fail and fall back into old patterns. But every time you catch yourself, every time you choose the better path, no matter how small the moment, you are practicing the art of sacrifice. And over time, those better choices accumulate. They shape you. Sacrifice isn't just about what you give up. It's about what you make room for. When you let go of resentment, you make space for forgiveness. When you let go of cowardice, you make space for courage. When you let go of selfishness, you make space for love. You're not just destroying something bad, you're nurturing something good. And that's the whole point. The best of you is not guaranteed. It doesn't just emerge on its own. It must be carved out day by day with effort and intention. And what fuels that carving is the conscious decision to give up what is lesser for the sake of what is greater. This is the central drama of the human condition. You are constantly being asked, who are you willing to stop being so that you can become who you're meant to be? There's a story in every religious and mythological tradition about the hero who must enter the dark cave, face the dragon, and come back transformed. That story is not just about defeating evil in the world. It's about facing the evil within yourself. The dragon is your pride. The dragon is your apathy. The dragon is everything that tempts you to live beneath your potential. And the only way to emerge from that cave with treasure, the treasure of wisdom, strength, and integrity, is to leave something behind. You don't get to keep it all. Something must be sacrificed. If you try to keep everything, you will lose yourself. That's the paradox. The person who clings to all their flaws, who refuses to confront and surrender what's broken within them, becomes weighed down, confused, lost, and angry. But the person who willingly gives up their worst, who lays it down on the altar of transformation, is set free. No one else can do this for you. It is a solitary act. You can receive guidance, support, encouragement, but at the end of the day, it is you who must stand at the edge of the fire and throw in what no longer serves you. And it is you who must walk forward into the unknown as someone new. So when the day ends and you're alone with your thoughts, ask yourself, what part of me must die for something better to live? Be honest. Be bold, and then, with trembling hands or quiet resolve, let it go, because the best of you is waiting, and it cannot emerge until the worst of you is laid to rest. There's a quiet place inside you where your best self waits. Not your loudest self, not your most impulsive self. The best. The part of you that sees through the fog, that knows right from wrong without needing to be convinced. The part that hopes when things seem hopeless, that urges you to try again when everything in you says quit. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it listens, and sometimes that's all you need to remember: someone is listening, even if it's just you at your best. We all live with an audience. For some, it's the eyes of the world. Friends, followers, family, critics. For others, it's the memory of a parent, a mentor, or a higher power. But beneath all those imagined or real observers, there is always one constant: yourself. Not the version you perform for others, but the one you can't deceive. That version is always listening, always watching, and it keeps the record, whether you like it or not. Every word you say, every decision you make, echoes in your own conscience. You can try to numb it. You can drown it in entertainment, in excuses, in blame. But the echo is still there. If you lie, you know it. If you betray your values, you feel it. Maybe not instantly, but inevitably. That's the weight of self-awareness. You are never fully alone, because you're always in the presence of the person you might become. And this matters because the path to growth runs straight through your relationship with yourself. Think of the way a parent encourages a child. You can do this. I believe in you. That voice matters, especially when the child is unsure, insecure, afraid. Well, you need that voice too, but here's the catch. It has to come from within, and it only emerges when you've built enough integrity to trust yourself. That starts with listening, really listening. At the end of your day, in a moment of stillness, ask, what did I do today that was honorable? Where did I fall short? Where did I act in fear instead of courage? These aren't questions of shame. They're questions of alignment. Because when your life is out of alignment, the voice of your best self grows faint. It gets crowded out by regret, resentment, and confusion. But when you live truthfully, when your actions match your values, that voice becomes louder, clearer, more certain, and it starts to guide you. This is the voice that reminds you of your potential when everything feels meaningless. The one that whispers, try again, after failure. The one that challenges you to be kind when cruelty would be easier, or to stay when it would be more convenient to run. That voice may not stop you from making mistakes, but it will hold you accountable. And that accountability is a form of grace, because when you live with the awareness that someone is listening, even if it's just the best version of yourself, it changes how you behave. You pause before reacting. You reflect before speaking. You don't take shortcuts. You don't sell out your integrity for momentary gain. And even if no one else notices, you notice. That's how character is built. In the choices you make when no one is watching except you. And in time, this internal witness becomes your standard, not perfection, but progress, not the voice of shame, but of responsibility, not the critic, but the counselor. You realize you're not just reacting to life anymore. You're shaping yourself through it. This is especially important when the world seems indifferent or hostile, when no applause comes, when you sacrifice for others and receive no thanks, when you work hard and see no immediate reward. In those moments, you must remember, someone is listening, not for praise, but for truth, not for perfection, but for effort. And if that listener is your best self, the one who remembers your principles, who holds you accountable, who wants what's good and just and noble, then you're not alone. You're never truly alone. You might ask, why does it matter if only I notice? Because how you treat yourself sets the tone for how you treat others. If you ignore your conscience, you become numb to the consequences of your actions. If you treat your own integrity lightly, you'll treat others the same way. But if you honor that quiet voice within, if you show up even when no one's clapping, then you become trustworthy, consistent, real. And people will sense it. Even if they can't name it, they'll feel it. They'll feel safer around you. They'll listen to you. Why? Because they'll know you listen to something higher than your own convenience. And maybe, in the deepest sense, that's what faith is. Not in some abstract doctrine, but in the idea that your life matters enough to be watched, weighed, and remembered. Not by the crowd, but by you. By the part of you that still believes in goodness, in redemption, in possibility. So when the day ends and the lights go out and the noise of the world fades, listen, speak, reflect, and remember someone is listening, even if it's just you at your best, and that version of you is worth striving for, worth speaking to, worth answering with the choices you make tomorrow.